it's Louise Platt at Spiral Bright Insight Astrology, and I want to do what I'm going to call a deep dive into the constellation of Cygnus in this video. Now, I'm a galactic and an intuitive astrologer, so I have a really beautiful kind of draw to call it beautiful because it just I find it absolutely mesmerizing and yeah, inspiring on a daily basis. A draw to the stars and to the patterns in the stars, into the messages that are kind of hidden within them, their energies, their archetypes. And as an astrologer, I bring the fixed stars into my astrology work, into my client birth chart readings, and also to really helping you to understand more about myself. What's beautiful about galactic astrology is it sort of uses the solar system as a kind of core basis, as an anchor, and then weaves in this beautiful tapestry of the fixed stars, this stellar wisdom, this timeless kind of often very distant and remote, but ancient, powerful, potent and stellar energy and frequency, and we can start to really expand our consciousness, our awareness, and our understanding of who we are as part of this beautiful kind of bigger picture, this tapestry of light. And I see in my work, I see patterns everywhere. And, what I'm finding is that the more I sort of tune in and the more I come back to myself and become more present, the more the insight is starting to really awaken. And, just in the way that I will look to, different patterns, through the stories, through the stars, geometry. I'm also always kind of paying attention when things start to come into my field, because I always say that things come into your field at the right time. Everything feels like a beautiful cosmic dance, whether we're aware of that or not. That is absolutely my core belief. And the more I move through this work, the more I'm being given evidence and validation and proof of that. So Cygnus is a really beautiful star system. It's also known as the Northern Cross. And I will drop in some footage, or well, not footage, but some visuals for you shortly as part of this video, so that you can start to see what these star systems look like, because I realize I am a very visual person, and I think when you start to kind of see these dots of light and the way they're formed, they start to come to life. You can start to almost you can understand where the stories are coming from, and it really helps me with my interpretations. So what is interesting with Cygnus, and the reason, well, there's a few reasons why I want to kind of share my insights with you on this channel right now. And well, I don't know, I guess I'll just trust that I go in the right kind of direction and share the things at the right time. But I know there has been of late, I've had quite a few people kind of signposting me to Cygnus in various ways, either sharing posts from other kind of content producers on Instagram or YouTube. Someone sort of pointed out to me that Stephen Burns had been talking about Cygnus, and that there appears to be some sort of signal coming from that star system, which has travelled, through many hundreds of thousands, millions of light years to get here. But so when things start coming in from different sources about the same sort of theme or topic, I always pay attention. And as well as that, which is absolutely relevant, I have also been really drawn to the Swan, the Cygnus, the Swan, in other ways. It started off sort of late last year when I started doing my solar return chart and my Venus return chart. I noticed that there were a lot of planetary energies and angles at 22 degrees in both charts. Now, my ascendant is 22 degrees of Virgo. I also have Uranus at 22 degrees of Libra. So the 22 is quite, it resonates with me. 22 is a master number. It's the number of the master builder. But there's also that really sort of beautiful kind of collaboration, coming together, partnership that comes through the two. But it was actually a friend of mine who said, because we were sort of talking about the 22, we all sort of talk about really cool stuff. And she said, the 22 always reminds me of the Swan. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's quite interesting, actually. Yeah, you're right. And, and the fact that swans always kind of tend to appear, in twos and what they represent. And so I just found myself sort of being drawn kind of into to this star system through many different ways. And I think at the time, because I also sort of am interested in the gene keys and a bit of human design, it's not my speciality, but I always find, that there's so much synchronicity and synastry between all these different modalities. I just thought, I wonder what gene key 22 is about. And somebody else had signposted me to the fact that each gene key has 3 animals related to it. And of course, 22 is the swan. It's the pathway of the swan. It's all about grace. And at the time, I was like, okay, yes, I definitely need to just kind of go a little bit deeper. And it turns out that my attention was being drawn to Cygnus because Cygnus is a really prominent and dominant star in my chart. Again, that kind of blew me away as well, because, they say that things only come to us at the right time. And, you can look at something, 100 times, you can go past the same thing every day, or look at something in a chart 100 times and not actually see what is there in plain sight, staring straight back at you, until there comes a time when suddenly you can. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And I'm sure that will resonate with a lot of people, who, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you have had that experience. And, this was the case for me with Cygnus in my chart, because it turns out that my ruling star, and the way you can find if you have a ruling star, not everyone does, is by taking your ascendant, looking at the planet that rules that ascendant. For me, as a Virgo ascendant, I have Mercury as my ruling planet, and then looking at Mercury, or your ruling planet, in your natal chart and seeing if there are any fixed stars aligned with it. Now, conjunctions and oppositions are going to be the most influential, certainly in terms of a ruling energy. And at the time when I first did this, obviously the version of the chart I was looking at obviously didn't have Deneb, which is kind of the alpha star in Cygnus, on the version of the chart that I was looking at, because I was taken to look at Thuban in Draco, which is opposite Mercury in my chart. But when I looked at my chart last week, I suddenly saw actually Deneb is conjunct Mercury in my chart. So Deneb, which is at the tail of the swan, is my ruling star, and it is, it's infusing my chart. And the fact that I'm being really called to talk about Cygnus is kind of testament to that. I hadn't seen it before, but suddenly there it is. And not only do I have Deneb conjunct, Deneb is conjunct Mercury, and therefore my ruling star. I also have the sun at 24 degrees of Aquarius is conjunct Sadir, which is the star in the center of the swan, or the cross, which is the heart of the swan. And that is kind of being infused with my kind of my energy, my light, my sun. The solar energy is really, blowing that star up in my chart as well, in a beautiful way. So, Cygnus has definitely suddenly decided to step straight forward into my field, into my kind of awareness. And when that happens, I kind of think, okay, there's something that I really need to look at and explore here. Things don't happen it's never a coincidence, is kind of the message. So, but it's also about the timing being right. And, we all say trust the timing, but astrology and my work is just such a strong validation for that, because, whenever I am sort of taking a booking for a client, I never know what's in their chart. I never know what transits are activating them, before I look at it. And often, because I have a lead time, it can be a number of weeks or even months before I actually come around to do the actual reading. But whenever that time appears, and sometimes, for whatever reason, somebody might get sort of moved up the list, or, again, I just trust fully that the universe is in charge and everything is completely aligned, because whenever I do look at a client's chart, there is always something key happening in the transits that is influencing and activating and awakening something within them. And I just think, it's so beautiful when you start to step into that flow and trust the process. And it's also reassurance that if things aren't happening for you now and you're feeling limited or restricted or held back, it's like there's a reason why things aren't happening, and there's a reason why you're being called to wait, and and it might feel like you're being held back, but actually it's like there's always purpose in everything. And yeah, that's obviously a message for someone, because I was called to share that. But Cygnus is the northern cross in the skies. It's in the shape of a cross, and I will just show you some videos. I'll drop them in now so that you can get a visual on what it is that I'm talking about. So this is a view of the Cygnus constellation, just so that you can get a visual sort of appreciation for its layout and the stars that I am talking about. So you can see here the layout of the Swan. Essentially, these are the two wings outstretched as it flies across the Milky Way, and this is its long neck here. So we have these Star Deneb or Deneb Adige, which sits at the base or the tail of the Swan. This is the star in the heart of the Swan, Sadir, and then we have Albireo at the beak or the head of the Swan. And this is an alternative view from earthsky.org where you can really see the shape of the cross. So again, we have the tail, the long neck, and the wingspan of the Swan, but you can also see the formation. This is actually the vertical line and the horizontal line in the northern skies. And here's a third image for you. So you can see the Swan. This is Lyra, the Lyre in proximity. You can see Draco above, Pegasus to the left, Cassiopeia and the king Cepheus, Hercules and the wolf beneath the Swan's neck. So we've seen what the Swan and the Northern Cross looks like, and yeah, I now want to talk about some of the energies of this particular constellation and why the timing feels right now to really bring it to the forefront now. And obviously we've had people starting to talk about it. I know Robert James Comer talks about the fact that the stars across the wings, so the heart and the two either side, they are believed to line up with the pyramids of Giza. And there's also, I've got his book, The Lost Octave, which I have to say is a fascinating book. I feel like I'm only just scraping the surface, in terms of being able to access the information. But he also has an image in there with the Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci, where the three stars are actually sort of superimposed and how they line up with the throat and the palms of the man outstretched. So there's lots of different symbolism and patterns that we can really dive into, but yeah, I think let's first of all talk about the let's talk about the Swan, because the Swan is it's called the celestial swan. The swan in the stars, as we look at it, is sort of soaring or gliding across the Milky Way in full flight, with the long neck extended out in front of it, its wings expanded. There is no doubt that this swan is flying, either flying or coming into land on the water. But when you see the swans on the water, they sort of their necks tend to sort of go back on themselves or underneath. They can go into the depths, they can reach out, but this swan is very much in flight. So it is really about the journey of the swan. And if we think about the Milky Way, that celestial river of stars in this beautiful kind of ribbon across the night sky, it is magical, and it's got lots of associations. The ancients used to say it was the gateway or the river to the afterlife, certainly to the star world, to other dimensions. And when we're working with Cygnus, the swan, there's this kind of beautiful energy of multidimensionality that comes through, this otherworldliness, but also this ability, if we think of the swan, the ability to take flight and to fly through the skies with its neck extended extended, able to see out in front of it, but also equally comfortable on water and also on land. And the swan is not a light bird, and it's often sometimes hard to imagine how it could take flight, but it's really, really graceful. It's the color, of white purity, almost like, white light comes in. There's very strong associations with protection, with loyalty, with devotion. As I said, swans tend to be seen in pairs, and often you see, when that kind of beautiful heart formation that is formed when the curves of the necks come together and they face each other, and often people sort of, use that symbolism. So it's beautiful kind of celestial union type imagery. But it's also, a symbol of beauty. I've said grace already, fluidity, the ability to almost like bend rather than break when you are kind of faced with a challenge. And this is what, if you have Cygnus in the chart, or we have Cygnus activations, that is often the kind of the message or the support or the wisdom that comes through. It's a very spiritual bird because of the multidimensionality, because of its ability to fly into other realms, across into the afterlife, potentially mystical. It's very visionary and also deeply sensitive. And, again, that ability to kind of cross worlds and be in different worlds and be of different worlds at the same time. Serenity comes through, and also this strength and calmness amongst the kind of often amongst chaotic environments, because if we think of the swan on the water, you can't see the feet sort of moving the paddles. It just kind of gracefully glides across the surface. So yeah, that's kind of, when I tune into the swan, it's like gliding, it's soaring, it's beautiful, it's exquisite, but also really quite inspiring. And yeah, kind of it instills awe. They are just so beautiful and also magnetic type creatures. They definitely stand out. And of course, in the UK, they are protected. They've got the royal seal. So yeah, they're very precious animals or creatures. And if we are looking for Cygnus in our chart, I possibly should have put this in earlier, but it's interesting because there are, I'm going to talk about 3 stars in this video. There are 5 that make up the kind of the cross. There are more if we kind of go a little bit further out and sort of mid down the neck. But the 3 that I work with are Embodiment, which is at 5 degrees. I will put the exact references in the description box below, but around about 5 degrees of Pisces is Embodiment at the tail. And then we have Sadir, which is at 24 degrees of Aquarius at the heart. And then at the beak, at the sort of the end of the extended neck, is Albireo, which is at 1 degree of Aquarius. So we've got this kind of sort of movement from Pisces back through Aquarius, and even that is really interesting, because if we think the Pisces energy is very much, and then I'm talking about the tropical placement of these stars in the tropical astrology. Pisces is very fluid. It is all about unity consciousness. It is about merging with something greater than ourselves, almost a connection to our soul, to our higher self, that spiritual kind of perspective, visionary, creative, compassionate, loving, but again about surrendering as well and letting go, kind of, yeah, stepping into the vastness, almost letting go of the physical. And then as we kind of move into Aquarius, obviously we're going backwards because this is how the swan, the constellation is laid out. We are then stepping into this kind of realm where we're more connected to humanity, but from a galactic or cosmic perspective. So the ability to kind of tune into other kind of timelines, potentially future timelines, a very quantum perspective, but also understanding that we are part of a greater whole and that we all have our unique role to play within that. And then again, coming back to the beginning of Aquarius, that takes us even more into into the Aquarian energy. So it's interesting that we have this kind of progression as we move down the kind of the core pillar of the swan, from the tail to the heart to the beak, that we're moving from the Pisces, which is really where in astrology this is kind of the end, where we almost let go of our physical bodies to step into the afterworld, or need to be born again, but we're almost doing it the other way. So this kind of brings me to the first of the themes that I want to share, which is about how I regard Cygnus as a really beautiful symbol of ascension and the process that humanity, on Earth, is undergoing to kind of rise up into the next dimension or other dimensions, to have this beautiful remembrance, this awakening that we are. We're not 3D, we're not limited, we're not restricted to our physical connection, and that we are actually souls within the physical. But rather than kind of ascending up and out, which has often been the kind of spiritual way, we have to leave our bodies to ascend, to connect, to be enlightened. And that has always been the teaching. The new teaching of the Aquarian age is very much about we ascend by coming in. So effectively we are descending, because we are bringing in the new human is this beautiful kind of combination or blending or merging of the higher self, the soul, almost the monad, into the body, and bringing it down and being fully embodied, being fully aware, fully in recognition of the fact that we are souls in physical form, rather than anything else, and that our souls, we've all sort of seen them as very separate to ourselves, but this is where we start to bridge that separation and bring the soul in. And when we do that, we remember who we are. We remember that we are creator beings, which is the Pisces energy. We remember that we are part of something more vast, something really beautiful, and source, that we are all fragments of source, and yet that is the Pisces energy. But then as fragments of source within the collective Aquarius, we are here to sing our own song, to almost like have our own frequency, our own note, and as part of that we kind of bring together this beautiful cosmic harmony. And how interesting it is that the kind of the swan is going down. If you think about the swan in flight, and we always talk about taking a swan dive or a nose dive, it's like going straight down. It's like this is absolutely, and the direction is downwards without question. And Cygnus is reminding us of that. We are descending, we're not falling, we are descending with purpose, with complete purpose, graceful descent, a graceful sort of almost steering ourselves down into the physical, because it is through that process that we are able to remember that we are eternal. And when we remember we are eternal, we let go of this kind of fear of death, fear of transition being the end, and we remember that we are infinite beings. And this is about bringing that awareness into the physical and really helping Gaia, Earth, to ascend in the process. So it's really, really beautiful how with the swan imagery and this kind of this descension, this kind of swan dive in. It does feel, and again, Robert talks about this in The Lost Octave, about how, we are actually, as humans, we are being given our wings. This is the point when we remember, when we connect to this higher frequency, when we remember that we are souls having a physical experience, and we can let go of the kind of mindset that says when we're physical it's a sacrifice, it's hard work, it's it's painful, it's like we take on the burden of victimhood. And I'll talk about the Southern Cross in relation to that shortly. But this kind of heaviness, it actually completely inverts the idea and says that actually to fully ascend and to be fully aware, we need to come fully into the body. And I've noticed sort of lately that and to be honest, it's always been this way, but I've just become more aware of it, that I get a lot of my insight and my wisdom, my messages and the information that comes through when I'm out walking. And because I am much more embodied, I'm much more present with myself, and much more kind of aware of my I'm much more tuned into nature and to the beautiful energies around me when I am walking out with my dog. And this is often when I get a lot of my my insights, my downloads, because it is about, you know, this, when we are fully embodied, when we are fully present, that's when we can align with you know, whatever it is that we kind of thought was outside of ourselves or separate, guides, spirit, angels, whatever. It's like, no, it's about, you know, literally bringing it in. And, you know, when you kind of bring that alignment in, the insight can flow much more easily. And this is really what this process of ascension, or rather descension, is all about, or certainly this is kind of my perspective. So the more sort of firmly we are rooted, the higher we can expand. You know, so it's kind of, yeah, the more we're embodied, the more grounded we are, the more earthed we are, the more more present, more whole, and that we are, the further we can expand, you know, the wider our wings can stretch, and the more we can fly. So it is about tethering our soul into the physical, but you know, that is the pathway, and this is what the message of the Swan is here to share with us. So as the swan sort of dives or soars across the sky, it's the divine feminine, and that beautiful multidimensional higher frequency energy entering into form. And this is the whole purpose, and this is absolutely what I'm being shown. So I just want to bring in the cross symbolism as well, because again, part of the pattern that I was picking up on was the fact that the Cygnus is the Northern Cross, and we saw that in the earlier part of the video. We also have in the Southern Hemisphere, we have Crux, which is the Southern Cross, and a Crux is at 11 degrees of Scorpio. It's the star at the base of the cross, if we were to look in the Southern Hemisphere. And when I'm just going to talk about a Crux briefly, because my interpretation of that is that there's a strong link to kind of the heaviness and the sacrifice and the suffering that comes. Obviously, when we think of the cross, we often link it to Christianity, to the crucifixion, to the fact that Jesus, you know, died on the cross, and then that was his kind of route, his pathway to resurrection. He almost came to teach us to have faith and to understand, you know, that death is not final, and that, you know, everything is a cycle. And he had, you know, found the way, he'd found the secret to the Holy Grail, you know, the way to bring himself back to life. So, and I know I've read a lot of books about, you know, this was a lot of the priestess kind of temple training, is, you know, the kind of the immortality, the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, all these sort of fascinating kind of areas. But the Southern Cross for me has always been quite physical. So it's about almost accepting or acknowledging that being physical is challenging, but it is like there is purpose to the pain, there is purpose to the challenge, to the density, to the restriction, the tension, you know, whatever the obstacles that but with the Southern Cross we are always anchored in, and it is the alchemy that happens within the physical body that is really what we're trying to get to. And again, it's the alchemy of resurrection, of eternal life. But the Northern Cross through Cygnus has a slightly different energy, because we're now in Pisces and Aquarius. And again, with Swan, it's like, it's almost, I'm kind of being shown it as the Southern Cross, and it doesn't really work, because in terms of astrology, if we're lining up the stars and the signs. But if we were to think of the Southern Cross as representing the South Node, which in astrology is where we've been, but also what we've had to experience in order to get to where we are. It's it's all the wisdom that we've kind of grown, that we've kind of accumulated, all the information we've accumulated as well, the knowledge, and how we've kind of taken that and sort of brought wisdom into it. But with the South Node, often it's like our comfort zone. So it's where we've been, you know, we've done all that. And if we keep doing all of that, we can't actually start to progress and evolve and grow and expand. So with the North Node, and therefore the North Cross, the Northern Cross, which I'll just bring in another element here, the Denebadij at the tail of the Swan is actually one of the future pole stars because of the way the Earth is kind of shifting in the future. And again, I can't give you an exact date. It certainly won't be in our lifetime. Deneb Adige will be one of the pole stars. So it's kind of like the North Star, the true north. This is where we're going, and we are heading into this kind of the new human, where the new human has wings. It is more galactic. It is more of a unified consciousness field. We understand that we are creator beings, Pisces. We understand that we are galactic and cosmic, Aquarius. We understand that the only way to really fulfill our potential and really make the most of kind of working with Gaia and the planet of creativity, which is what Earth is to fully come in and to fully embrace and fully grasp this opportunity that we have been given. And of course, so many people talk about ascension. This ascension that Earth is going through is an experiment, because it's never been done before, where beings have ascended while still being in physical form. So this is a complete experiment. This is completely uncharted territory. There is no real kind of predestined project file or blueprint for this. It's like we're just kind of going with it and trying it and going to see what happens. But again, I'm just going to keep saying it requires us to come fully in. And also, what's really beautiful, if we think about the cross, and again, I talk about this when I see a crux in people's charts, is if you think of the cross, when you join all the four corners together, you actually have a kite shape or a diamond shape. And again, it depends on perspective. But with the kite, we have this kind of ability to soar, but be still tethered, because if the kite is not tethered onto a string, it will fly off, and that's it, you've lost it. So the kite must be tethered in order for it to fly. Obviously, we need the air and the wind. So the air, the ability to breathe, the ability to flow, not necessarily be fixed, but again, being trusting in the path and the dance and the beautiful movement of the flight on the wind, in the air, in the expanse. You need space as well. But also with the diamond, really beautiful symbolism, because if we think the diamond is actually originally a piece of carbon, and it is the alchemical process where pressure is kind of put on this piece of carbon in order to transform it into the diamond. And the diamond is exquisite, but the diamond knows that it has to go through pain. It has to be put under huge duress, huge pressure, huge tension, in order to kind of almost experience or uncover or reveal its full potential. And again, that just feels really relevant for what we are going through. And it's a reminder that there is always purpose in the pain, and there is purpose in the challenge. It's not just, for the hell of it. It is actually so that we can come back to ourselves, and we can almost, experience that alchemy and that remembrance and that resurrection and that remembering, the bringing back all these separate pieces together, which, again, there's so many different stories in myth that kind of follow that theme. And with a cross, we have the kind of the vertical and the horizontal axis. So it is really about the divine meeting the human, so spirit, matter, and that cross, the focal point in the middle where they both meet, is the heart. And, in the Swan, you have Sadir, which is this beautiful, beautiful star. So I'll talk about the separate stars and how they kind of, how I interpret them in a minute. But I also want to just, again, I'm being reminded to bring in the kind of the theme of music, because in myth, it is said that Orpheus, who was the musician, he played the lyre, he used to, absolutely mesmerize and enchant people with his beautiful music. He was turned into a swan. So it said that Cygnus is actually Orpheus. So there's this beautiful connection to music. And when I've sort of been really kind of tuning in to Cygnus, I keep hearing over and over again, music of the spheres. And that, is absolutely relevant, because if we think, we use expressions like the swan song, which is, the beautiful melody that's the swan, or the song that the swan is said to sing just before it kind of takes its final breath, and it's this biggest masterpiece, this beautiful melody that comes out of this creature. And again, it's very mythical, but it's also it's symbolic. So and I will, and that feels really relevant. So with Orpheus and the Swan, there's this acknowledgement, or this kind of point, this kind of, pay attention, consider that Orpheus was someone who kind of remembered what the original kind of resonance, what the original song music was intended to be, and how we have become discordant. We're no longer aligned. We're no longer kind of operating from a space of wholeness. We've got these such huge fragments and division and rupturing in our society, even within us, with all the wars, but it's an internal rupture and fragmentation and scattering as well, because we have forgotten that we are whole. We've forgotten that we are souls as well as physical, and that separation creates the grief and the remorse and the longing and the confusion and the distortion and the disillusion and the feeling out of place and all of that. And I'm just really being shown that when we kind of tune into Cygnus, that there is this opportunity to almost tune into the divine geometry, to remember and to hear the notes being sung. And again, it's like having a radio station, when you sort of change the dial and you're trying to find the frequency, you're trying to find the station, and it's like all white noise and you can't, and then suddenly you're in. That's how I feel, connecting to our spiritual self. We can kind of walk around almost like being completely asleep, and everything is out there. Everything is there. All the symbols, all the information, all the patterns, all the insights, it is all there. But unless you're tuned into it, you are not necessarily going to see it. Just like the example I used of Cygnus in my chart, it was there all the time, but it wasn't until, I was ready to see it that I could actually see it. And it's the same with the symbols. It's the same with everything, the insight. It's the same with tuning into yourself, to your higher wisdom. Again, sometimes you need to, do certain things in a certain way in order to have a perspective that, just unlocks a kind of, a viewpoint. They're like, oh gosh, how come I didn't see that before? That's so obvious, and we're constantly doing that. And that's kind of the way we work. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly growing, we're constantly going, oh, okay, I get it now. And then you're on to the next level. But it is really, when we tune into this frequency, we almost can feel, we can hear, and it is a resonance. I use the word feel. I'm being shown the tuning forks. And, again, there are connections to, I watched a thing on Gaia about, is it Gobli Tepeki? Oh, I can't remember how you say it, but this ancient kind of civilization, and the fact that all the stones have been built and they look like tuning forks. They're kind of they've got the pillar and then the cross and the top bit, and it's really about I think again, this is just coming in, this is when we tune into that frequency, we will be able to hear the music of the spheres. And it's like, again, it's quite random, but I keep being shown or reminded. I don't think it's it could be a complete coincidence, but I went to see Coldplay last year. There is a point to this. And it was at Wembley, huge arena, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people in this space. And Chris Martin, is singing, doing his thing. And it was phenomenal because we're all there. And he actually stopped at one point and said, I just want to take a moment to kind of recognize and appreciate, that everybody here, we're all from different kind of backgrounds and different upbringings, different cultures. We have different skin colors. We speak different languages. We have different political beliefs. We have different religious beliefs. We have different spiritual beliefs. There is just a complete and utter melting pot of different people, and yet we're all here and we're all unified and we are all enjoying and all connected through. And it's music that is that connection. It is music. And it wasn't just music, because the other thing that really struck me was, and if you've been to any of these concerts recently, you might know, you get given a wristband when you go in and they light up, and it's all sort of done, I don't know, Bluetooth to whatever. And they light up at the same time, and it just brings, I don't know, I can't explain it, but it just felt like we were all part of a whole in that for those 3 hours of that concert. And we were all, singing and harmonizing and tuned in to this beautiful music, this incredible singer. He's literally the conductor of everything. But it's like this, the music and the music of the spheres, which is linked to Orpheus, therefore the Swan, has this ability to unite us. And this is where I'm sort of being shown the Pisces energy and the Aquarian energy, and this kind of unification, this remembering. And when we remember who we are, and we kind of heal the wound of separation within ourselves, we heal the wound of separation and conflict outside as well. Because when we remember who we are, and I'm wondering whether this is about suddenly the energy or the frequency on our planet changing slightly, so that suddenly we can all hear the music. Suddenly we're tuned into this frequency, and once we're tuned into it and we can hear the melody, it changes everything. It feels like that kind of thing. And I know lots of people have talked about a solar flash or a big event happening to change everything, but it could be linked to frequency. It could be harmonic. It could be something that just shifts our ear, changes, a fine tuning, a readjustment with the energy that we're able to tune into, so that we can suddenly hear the music. And if you think about songs, singing, how it has the ability, music has the ability to sort of push beyond boundaries, to break down boundaries, and to bring us together, to bring coherence back. And when everybody kind of sings together, we might all be singing a different note, and often, it's even more beautiful when we do, but it is that harmonic kind of coherence and cadence that is formed through song and through us all singing our own notes, but this beautiful melody and harmony that comes. And music has the ability to open the heart, absolutely, and to help us remember our souls. So that's kind of also another really key energy, mission, purpose, wisdom message of Cygnus. But why am I bringing all this in? The North Node is currently approaching Deneb Adige in Pisces. So this is currently at 5 degrees 40 minutes of Pisces, and I think the North Node is currently at 7, so it's going to go back. So we're going to have an exact alignment over the coming months. And Deneb is the tail of the Swan, so it's almost like the base, the anchor, because this is the kind of steering star. Although it's at the top of the cross, it's at the base of the Swan as the Swan kind of takes flight, is soaring across the sky. So it's like this point of orientation, which fits beautifully with its role in future as the pole star. It is, again, we've got this energy of bridging that comes through, again, the mystical, the kind of grace, the beauty, the elegance, purity, love, transcendence. But it is very much about steering the way and being a point of orientation. I should also say, if you've got strong Cygnus in your chart, there's often very strong angelic connections, kind of otherworldly, but also playful, creative. So the elementals, kind of the fae, the spirits, are often very sort of present either in your lineage or in your reality in some way if you have Cygnus in your chart. So the kind of the tail or the top of the cross, which is kind of if we're thinking about the cross as the ascension, but we're coming down into the base of it, it is the monad, the higher self, the spirit that is almost steering it and guiding us into, bringing us into land in the most graceful way possible, but steering. Sadir is at 24 degrees 50 minutes of Aquarius. So as the North Node moves back through into Aquarius, and remember the North Node goes in retrograde. So it's going to get to 0 degrees of Pisces and then 29 degrees of Aquarius, and then head towards Sadir, the heart of the Swan. This is really about kind of having a steady, stabilizing type force. It's the emotional core, so it's the heart center. It's where the heart awakens, where we're fully connected to our heart, the heart of the earth, the heart of humanity. It's also the point where the wings join, so there's this beautiful ability, and now we're in Aquarius energy in the tropical, the ability to breathe, to take flight, to expand. We need the air. We need to be able to breathe fully, to almost experience that liberation and that freedom that comes from the breath, connection to the breath. And there's also, deep intuitive gifts come through, the heart-centered presence comes through, and also that kind of acknowledgement that, things are changing. Aquarius is an energy of progress that does come with obviously change as part of that. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, so it can be quite destabilizing. We don't often like change, but it's about being able to keep that kind of point of contact, that coherent, that pillar, that stable center within the kind of chaotic field, as things do kind of get shifted up and messed and like shaken up, so that they can kind of find the way that they need to fall in a more coherent way, if that makes sense. So this is a star of very grounded visionary energy, which I find interesting because it's on my sun. The clarity and the ability to see through the fog, to see through social conditioning, to challenge the status quo, to shift paradigms and, reunite head and heart. And again, it's that kind of, reunite the physical, the human journey, and the spiritual, and remembering that we are so much more. Also find it interesting that if you have this star in your chart, it can often indicate the gift to see symbols and patterns and make sense of things. Again, it's like, oh, when I read that, I was like, okay. But it's also, if we think of the heart and the heartbeat and the pulse, it's being able to tune into that rhythm and the pulse of the universe, the pulse of the cosmos. And again, when we do that, we remember that we're alive. And, again, yes, we may transition, yes, we may change form, but there's this beautiful energy of resurrection and, this kind of, the memory that we are immortal, which is really, the Orpheus, the music of the spheres, and the Swan is here to remind us. And then as we get down to the bottom of the cross, or the head of the Swan, the beak, we have Albireo, which is at 1 degree 15 of Aquarius at the moment. And this is kind of, if you think about the beak, this is, if you've got this star in your chart, it's a real kind of heightened sensitivity, vigilance, being able to see what is ahead, to be able to see beneath the surface as well. If you think, this beak can sort of almost hit the bed of the riverbed underneath the water. Get what you need as well, but again, be able to see out in front. So see what's coming. There's quite a lot of prophetic type energy that comes through. It's also about communication and the voice. See, the swans, when they talk, you'd pay attention. But kind of bridging depth and awareness comes through. And also being able to, I guess, see solutions and see ways of kind of working through things rather than conflict. So it's real clarity comes through, and this kind of bringing the logic of the mind and the rhythm of the heart together, which is really what the cross is doing, in that pillar, bringing in grounding. So we also have some supermassive black holes within Cygnus, which is where the signaling is said to be coming from, Cygnus X1 and Cygnus X3, but I don't have the coordinates for them. That might be something that I come to look at in the future. And I know the two stars, which, if we were to look at the this constellation on the Vitruvian Man, that are sort of the position of the palms, are at 16 degrees 37 minutes of Aquarius and 28 degrees 07 minutes of Aquarius at this time. So either side. So yeah, there's just so much to say, and I hope you've managed to sort of follow and kind of resonate with some of these insights and messages. But please do share as well. If, as I've been talking, you might have had something kind of drop in and like, oh my God, yes, of course, that's it. And if there's anything like that, please either comment or feel free to email me, because I feel like I'm not quite done with this star system yet. And I think, as the North Node moves through it and activates it, it's going to be really, really important. But it is really about remembrance and kind of activating this understanding and this kind of, the knowledge that we all have. It's in the field, but it's almost like pointing the way, it's like, this is where we're going. And it's although it feels like uncharted territory, it's almost remembering that we have this blueprint, we have this map within us, we've got all this information, but we need to be tuned into the right frequency. And often it is through the tuning forks. The tuning forks feel really important. And wouldn't you know, I had these in February, which I think I actually got them sort of the week before the sun moved into Gene Key 22, which again can't be a coincidence. But yeah, kind of using that frequency to awaken memories within us. And when we have these memories awakened, and when we tune into this song, the song of the universe, the cosmos, and the angelic choir, whatever it is, then that feels like the game changer. That's when everything shifts, and when we remember and we wake up, and then from then on, we're on the same journey, but from a very, very different perspective, in a very different reality. And that's kind of, I think, all I wanted to say. Let me just double check my notes, because I've talked about most of the things I think I had noted. I suppose actually I'll just finish off with the ugly duckling, because of course, in the fairy tale, the ugly duckling felt, unloved, felt different, didn't fit in, just looked different from the others, and because it didn't know it was a swan. And, that's often how we can feel as starseeds, as higher frequency souls. We come in, we've got all this kind of understanding, but we just feel out of time. We feel out of place. The energy doesn't flow. It doesn't seem to make sense. We can just think, what's wrong with us? But as I'm being reminded to say about Chiron, the wounded healer, because this fits beautifully, it's like, using that kind of energy, that experience of not fitting in and feeling different, but understanding that actually that is our greatest gift, and there is always purpose for it. And actually, once we kind of get through that, and we grow and we expand and we evolve into who we're meant to be, we become the swan. Oh my goodness, how beautiful is that? Flying across the Milky Way. But because this is about descendants, it is about coming into the body in order to make that journey. And this is really what Cygnus is here to remind us, and the truth and the power and the potency and the potential of this incredible I don't even know what to call it, but being fully anchored in the divine, and doing it with complete awareness and with complete direction and intention, because once we realize that's the trajectory we're on, we know exactly where to go and what to do. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my musings. And if you want to follow me, I have a website, I'm on Instagram, I also have a Facebook page, but please also like and share and subscribe here if you have not already done. But I also have a mailing list, so you can sign up for that, and I'll just sort of send out information about what I'm doing, special offers, courses, that sort of thing, as and when it becomes relevant. So I will leave it there. Have an amazing rest of the day, and look forward to catching up soon.